Chapter 3, Echoes in the Deep. The descent into Sublevel 7 felt like traveling backwards through time. Each level down stripped away another layer of the city's polished facade, revealing the bones beneath. Kael followed Silas through maintenance corridors that grew progressively darker and more cramped, the air thick with the smell of rust and forgotten machinery. Emergency lighting cast harsh shadows that danced with their movement, creating an endless parade of ghosts on the corroded walls. Silas moved with practiced ease through the maze of service tunnels, his modified tablet casting a pale blue glow as he checked schematics and power grid maps. The Foundry District was the heart of the old industrial sector, he explained, his voice echoing strangely in the narrow passage. Before the corporations moved everything off-world, this place hummed with activity 24 hours a day. Thousands of workers, massive fabrication units, enough power flowing through here to light half the city. They passed through a security checkpoint that had been abandoned decades ago, its scanners dark and silent. Kael could see where someone had carefully bypassed the locking mechanisms, leaving just enough functionality to keep casual explorers out, while allowing those who knew the tricks to pass through. The work was elegant, professional. Silas wasn't the only one who used these forgotten spaces. "Who else comes down here?" Kael asked, noting the subtle signs of regular passage. Worn spots on the floor, handholds polished smooth by countless touches, the faint smell of recent human presence beneath the industrial decay. "Freelancers mostly," Silas replied, pausing to check his tablet again. "Data runners who need serious processing power without corporate oversight. Black market researchers working on things that would get them disappeared if they tried it in a registered lab. The occasional corporate exile who still has skills worth selling." He glanced back at Kael with a wry smile. People like us, in other words. They reached a heavy blast door marked with radiation warnings and corporate safety notices that were older than Kael. Silas produced a small device from his jacket and connected it to the door's control panel. Numbers scrolled across its screen as it worked to crack the ancient security codes. "The radiation warnings are mostly fake," Silas said, noticing Kael's concerned expression. "Psychological deterrent from the old days. There's some residual electromagnetic interference from the old coolant systems, but nothing that will kill you, probably." The door cycled open with a grinding mechanical sound that spoke of age and neglect. Beyond the door lay a vast chamber that took Kael's breath away. The coolant processing center stretched out before them like a cathedral of industry, its ceiling lost in shadows high above. Massive pipes snaked through the space, some as wide as subway tunnels, supported by a framework of steel beams that created a complex, three-dimensional maze. Emergency lighting provided just enough illumination to navigate, casting everything in a dim red glow that made the space feel like the inside of some enormous, sleeping creature. "Welcome to the deep," Silas said, his voice carrying a note of reverence. "This is where the city's blood used to flow. Coolant for the fabrication units, the processing centers, the massive server farms that handled all the data traffic before they figured out how to do it more efficiently in orbit." He led Kael down a metal stairway that spiraled around one of the larger pipes. Now it's just a tomb, but a useful tomb. As they descended, Kael began to notice signs of more recent activity. Cables had been run along some of the pipes, disappearing into the shadows. He could hear the distant hum of electronics, the soft whir of cooling fans. Somewhere in this mechanical graveyard, people were still working. "The thermal signature down here is chaos," Silas explained as they walked. "All these old systems still generate heat, electromagnetic noise, random power fluctuations. Perfect cover for high-intensity data processing. Corporate surveillance satellites can't pick out individual activities from all the background interference." They reached the bottom level, and Silas led them along a walkway that ran beside a massive coolant tank. The tank was empty now, its interior visible through inspection ports. But Kael could imagine it filled with the exotic fluids that had once carried heat away from the city's industrial heart. Everything here spoke of a time when the physical world still mattered, before the corporations had learned to make their fortunes from pure information. "Here we are," Silas said, stopping at what looked like just another maintenance alcove. But as they got closer, Kael could see that someone had transformed the space into a sophisticated workshop. Multiple workstations were built into the walls, their screens dark but ready. Cables and fiber optic lines ran everywhere, connecting to junction boxes that had been carefully integrated into the original infrastructure. It was hidden, professional, and clearly designed for serious work. Silas activated the systems with a series of commands entered on a hidden keypad. The alcove came alive with the soft glow of monitors and the quiet hum of high-end processing equipment. "This is my real office," he said with obvious pride. "Took me 3 years to build it, another 2 to get all the connections stable. Full quantum encryption, isolated from all public networks, enough processing power to crack most corporate security if you give it enough time." Kael looked around the space with professional appreciation. The setup was impressive, clearly the work of someone who understood both the technical requirements and the security implications of what they were doing. "How many people know about this place?" "Just me," Silas said, settling into the main workstation chair. "And now you. I've got other contacts who use the tunnels, but everyone keeps their own secrets down here. Safer that way." He held out his hand. "Let's see what Lysander died to give us." Kael pulled the data chip from his pocket and placed it in Silas's palm. It seemed such a small thing to contain so much potential danger. Silas inserted it into a specialized reader that was clearly designed to handle damaged or corrupted data. "This is going to take some time," Silas warned as code began scrolling across his screens. "Lysander did a good job fragmenting the data before he pulled it, but that means I have to piece together the original structure before I can make sense of what it contains. Could be hours before we have anything useful." Kael found a chair and settled in to wait. The workshop felt strangely peaceful despite the circumstances. The constant background noise of the old systems created a kind of white noise that was almost soothing. He found himself thinking about Lysander, about their time together at Synergenica, about the excitement they had all felt when the Cortex Link project first showed promise. "Tell me about the early days," Silas said without looking away from his screens. "When you and Lysander were building the Cortex Link, what was it like working for Synergenica back then?" Kael leaned back in his chair, letting the memories surface. "It felt like we were changing the world. The technology was so elegant, so clean. Direct neural interface without any of the clunky hardware that earlier systems required. We could overlay digital information directly onto visual perception, enhance memory and processing speed, even allow limited telepathic communication between linked users." "Sounds like paradise," Silas said, but there was skepticism in his voice. "That's what we thought," Kael replied. The applications seemed endless. Medical monitoring, educational enhancement, entertainment that was indistinguishable from reality. We were so focused on what we could do that we didn't spend enough time thinking about what could go wrong. Or what someone might want to go wrong, Silas added. His fingers paused over the keyboard. "I'm starting to see some patterns in the data. The corruption isn't random. Someone tried to scrub this information, but they didn't get all of it." Kael sat up straighter. "What kind of patterns?" "Command structures. The fragments show evidence of external control protocols, ways to send instructions directly to the implant's core systems. But these aren't standard user interface commands. These are low-level hardware instructions, the kind that could override safety systems or cause deliberate malfunctions." A chill ran down Kael's spine. That's not supposed to be possible. The Cortex Link was designed with multiple layers of security specifically to prevent external tampering. "Designed by who?" Silas asked, finally turning to look at him. "You said you worked on the project, but you weren't the only one. Who else had access to the core architecture?" Kael thought back to the development team, trying to remember who had worked on which components. The core neural interface was developed by a small team. Myself, Lysander, Dr. Elena Vasquez from the Neuroscience Division, and Marcus Chen from Security Systems. But the overall project involved dozens of people across multiple departments. "What about the provisioning servers, the ones that manage implant activation and updates?" "That was handled by a separate team entirely. Higher security clearance, more restricted access. I never worked directly with those systems." Kael felt a growing unease as he realized how compartmentalized the project had been. We were told it was for security reasons, to prevent any one person from having complete access to the system. Or to prevent any one person from seeing the complete picture, Silas suggested. If someone wanted to build back doors into the system, compartmentalization would be the perfect cover. Each team only sees their piece of the puzzle. The screens around them continued to flicker with data as Silas's programs worked to reconstruct Lysander's stolen information. Kael watched the code scroll by, recognizing some of the structures from his own work, but seeing other elements that were completely foreign to him. There, Silas said suddenly, pointing to a section of code that had just appeared on his main monitor. That's not Cortex-Link architecture. That's something else entirely, something that was grafted onto the core system. Kael leaned forward to study the code. It was elegant in its simplicity, a small subroutine that appeared to monitor neural activity patterns and respond to specific triggers. But the responses it was programmed to generate were horrifying. "This is an assassination protocol," he said quietly. "It's designed to cause exactly the kind of cascade failure that killed Lysander." "And it's not a bug," Silas added grimly. "This was built intentionally, carefully integrated into the system, so it would be almost impossible to detect during normal operation. Someone spent a lot of time and effort making sure this would work." They sat in silence for a moment, the implications sinking in. The Cortex-Link wasn't just flawed, it was weaponized. Someone had turned their dream of human enhancement into a tool for murder. "We need to find out who did this," Kael said finally, "and we need to find out how many people are at risk." "The who is going to be the hard part," Silas replied, saving his work and beginning a new analysis routine. "But the how many?" He pulled up a different set of data, statistics from Synergenica's public reports about Cortex-Link deployment. According to their own numbers, there are over 50,000 active Cortex-Link users in the city alone. Worldwide, the number is probably 10 times that. Kael felt sick. 500,000 people walking around with potential death sentences implanted in their brains, and none of them knew it. How do we warn them? How do we stop this? "We can't," Silas said bluntly. "Not directly. Even if we went public with this information, who would believe us? Synergenica would deny everything, claim we fabricated the evidence. They have more lawyers and public relations specialists than we have friends. So what do we do?" Silas turned back to his screens, his expression grim but determined. "We get more evidence. We find out who's behind this and why they're doing it. And we find a way to stop them before they can activate their weapon on a larger scale." "You think they're planning something bigger?" "I think Lysander was killed because he was getting too close to the truth. But if they were just trying to cover up a design flaw, they could have done that more quietly. The fact that they built this assassination protocol suggests they have plans for it." Silas pulled up another set of data, network traffic logs that showed unusual activity patterns. "Look at this. In the past month, there's been a significant increase in data traffic to the provisioning servers. Someone's been updating the control protocols for thousands of implants." Kael studied the traffic patterns, his programmer's mind automatically analyzing the data flows. "This isn't random maintenance. The updates are being pushed to specific implant serial numbers, and the timing suggests coordination." "Exactly. Someone is preparing for something. And based on the pattern of updates, I'd say they're planning to activate the assassination protocol on a massive scale." The workshop fell silent, except for the constant background hum of machinery. Kael stared at the screens, trying to process the magnitude of what they had discovered. Somewhere in the city, possibly in the corporate towers high above them, people were planning mass murder on an unprecedented scale. "We have to stop them," he said finally. "We will," Silas replied. "But first we need to understand exactly what we're up against. And that means going deeper into the system than either of us has ever gone before." He began typing commands into his workstation, his fingers flying over the keyboard with practiced precision. "I'm going to try to trace the source of those update commands. If we can identify who's sending them, we might be able to figure out their timeline." As Silas worked, Kael found himself thinking about Lysander again. His friend had died trying to uncover this conspiracy. but his sacrifice hadn't been in vain. The data chip he had given Kael was providing them with the keys to understanding the threat they faced. "Got something," Silas said after several minutes of intense concentration. "The update commands are coming from a secure server cluster in the Synergenica Tower, but they're being routed through multiple proxy systems to hide their origin. Professional-grade operational security. Can you trace them back to the source?" "Maybe, but it's going to require some serious intrusion work, the kind that will definitely be noticed if we're not careful." Silas turned to look at Kael, his expression serious. "This is the point of no return. Once we start actively hacking into Synergenica's core systems, we become criminals in the eyes of the law. There won't be any going back to your old life." Kael thought about his comfortable apartment in the corporate district, his respectable job, the life he had built for himself over the years. Then he thought about Lysander's body convulsing on the cafeteria floor, and about the 500,000 people who might face the same fate if they didn't act. "Do it," he said. Silas nodded and turned back to his screens. "This is going to take some time. The security around those servers is military grade, but I've got some tricks they probably haven't seen before." As Silas began his assault on Synergenica's defenses, Kael settled back to wait. Around them, the old coolant processing center hummed with the ghosts of its industrial past, while in the hidden workshop, they prepared to wage war against the future. Length, medium chapter completed, approximately 2,500 words. Assessment, successfully advanced the investigation while deepening the conspiracy and raising the stakes. Balanced technical exposition with character development and atmospheric world building. Maintained tension while providing crucial plot revelations. Editor notes, arc alignment, advanced synapse collapse by revealing the weaponized nature of the Cortex link and the massive scale of the threat. Character development, strengthened Kael and Silas's partnership while showing Kael's commitment to justice over personal safety. Style consistency, maintained everyday vocabulary level while preserving cyberpunk atmosphere and technical authenticity. Connections to previous chapters. Direct continuation from Chapter 2's ending, following through on the descent to Sublevel 7 and data analysis. Structural considerations. Built revelation gradually through technical discovery, established the workshop setting for future scenes, ended with clear escalation toward active resistance.